In a previous video, we finished displaying our records on the list. In this video, we're going to have a look at how we can actually filter these records using our form. We will also start working on a sticky class, which is basically going to take care of making sure that whenever we select something in a form, type in some search criteria and hit search, these values will stay selected, and whatever has been typed into the search field will be there as well. Also, the checkboxes which you've checked and radio buttons will still stay selected as well. So let's go back to our editor, and we are going to create a new directory under the app directory. We call this directory search, and within this one we are going to create a new class called search, and this class will be under the namespace app search. So namespace app search. Okay, now first thing we need to do is to set a few properties. It's going to be a private request, which will be the instance of the request, Illuminate request, HTTP request. The next property is going to be called expected, private expected, and it's going to be an array, and it will contain a list of fields that we want to search by, filter by our records. Public collection is the last one, which is going to contain the filtered collection of all these items that I want to filter by. Okay, and then constructor. Constructor will instantiate request and this expected property. Now that we have them instantiated, the next thing we're going to do is to call the method collect this collect. So when we instantiate in our search class, we expecting the instance of the request object, and then we also expect an array of all the items that we want to filter by. Then collect method, which we create here. Well, collect method, what will this method do? It basically will do the expected again, equals this request only, and then this expected. So we are now fetching the items that have been submitted with the form, with the search form. They obviously are sent through the get request. So this request instance using this only item will only fetch those which have been added through as an argument to the constructor of this class, and only these items will now be stored within this expected variable, which obviously becomes an array. Then what we're going to do is this collection equals array filter. We're basically filtering what we got with this request. Then we pass expected array, so all these items that we've just fetched, and then function value, we check if any of these values is empty. If it's empty, it's not going to be within this collection. So only items that actually have some value associated with them. So return and exclamation mark, this is empty, and we pass value through as an argument. Let me just quickly explain again what this is doing. So we're filtering through all these items. If we go back to the browser, when I hit search, you can see we have keyword, we have category, we have author, year, language. And now at the moment, these items are empty. So after equal symbol, there's nothing, there's no value for each of these items, meaning that obviously this collection will be completely empty, because even though we've collected them all, this expected contains all these indexes, but this array that we have within the expected will be something like this. Keyword equals empty, then whatever else we have also empty, and so on. So here within this filter, array filter, we're checking, is it empty? If it's not empty, add it to the collection, return it basically from this filter array. Otherwise, do not return it. In other words, this collection is going to be empty if we were to submit the form without any value selected or entered, and so on. Okay, so now we don't have this empty method, obviously, so let's quickly add this method here. Now this empty method will return boolean true or false, and it will check first of all if value is empty, but empty, sorry, not empty value, but empty would return true even if we have 0 integer pass through, because 0 evaluates to empty basically when we call this empty function on it. And obviously sometimes 0 might be the value that you actually want to select and filter by. So we need to make sure that the value is not numeric. So isn't is numeric value. So it is empty and it's not numerical. So if it's a 0, this will fail, and obviously this will return false because it won't be empty if the 0 is the value that we're passing through. Okay, let's actually straight away add some doc blocks here. So is empty value might be anything, so mixed, and check if value is empty. For the collect method, we are going to have, it doesn't take anything, return void as well. Void, there we go. And the message is going to be collect search criteria, I think is going to be fine. Okay, yeah, let's keep it this way. Okay, so this is one of these things. So we now have the collection. Obviously, when we instantiate this class, first of all, we associate all the properties with request and expected array, then collect all these items. So the collection now is ready after the instantiation of this object. The next thing we want to do here is to add a few other methods. After this is empty, we will need the method which checks if the collection is now empty. So public function is collection empty, basically checking if this collection after submitting the form has any items or not. So return empty this collection. If the array is empty, then obviously that's going to return true, otherwise it's going to return false. And returns boolean, which is fine. Check if collection is empty. Okay, next method that we need within this class is going to be called has, and it will check if the given key exists within the collection. So public function again has, and we have key, or shall we call it a name? Let's keep it as name perhaps. Return array key exists, so name within the collection. Actually, you know, probably key is going to be better here because we're checking for a given key within the collection. Okay, and again, doc blocks key will be of the string type in this case, and check if input with the given name exists in the collection. I'll check if the given input exists in the collection. I think this is a little bit better. Okay, now after has, we're going to have the method which checks if the value equals whatever we pass as a second argument. So public function value is, and we pass in the key and then value. And first of all, we check if this has key, and we obviously started with the exclamation mark, which means we're checking if it doesn't have a key. So if it doesn't have a key, then obviously there's not going to be any value, so return false straight away. Otherwise, we're going to evaluate it. So this collection key and double equal, we check for equality to the value. So basically we're comparing whether an item within the collection equals whatever the value has been sent through as a second argument. We check for equality, not identity, because obviously we don't know what data type the value is going to be passed as, so we can't really typecast it to say integer, string, or anything else. That's why we check for equality rather than identity. Okay, and let's add some doc block here as well. So key is going to be of the string type. Value can be anything, so it's going to be mixed. And summary is going to be check if value is equal value. Okay, the next method that we need to have here is going to be the one that will allow us to get the item from the collection. So public function get, and then key. And again, we're going to do exactly same check. If it's not set within the collection, then return, actually rather than false this time, is going to be null. Otherwise, we know it's within our collection, so we simply return this collection and then the key. And again, doc blocks here. The key is going to be of the string type, and summary is going to be get value associated with the key. Okay, and the last method for this class will be set, so we can actually set an additional item or add an additional item to our collection. So public function set, we're gonna take the key and then the value, and this will simply be this collection key and set it to the value. And doc blocks, this one does not return anything, so return void. The key is going to be a string, value is going to be mixed because we don't know, it might be anything. And I think we have it all here, returning boolean, that's fine. Okay, and summary is going to be set value for a given key. And I think that's it within our search class. Let's now quickly write some tests for it. So tests unit search directory, and within the search directory we are going to create the new class called search test, which will extend test case, and we start with the protected function setup. We first call parent setup to make sure that if there's anything within the test case or anything higher than that, any parent classes of this test case, first execute it. And then we are going to set get superglobal to an empty array. So every time we're going to run test within the search test class, each of these tests will start with an empty get request. Okay, so the first test is going to check if we can collect non-empty input. So public function collects non-empty request or input. Input, I think, is going to be better. Okay, and then let's make sure that it's a test. So a test stack, and we're going to start with setting the get parameter of the keyword to something like book, for instance. So now we know that the get request contains this keyword key with the value book. So now we're going for search equals new search, and this search takes HTTP Illuminate HTTP request instance as the first argument. So I'm going to put on a new line request HTTP request and captcha. This will instantiate it, and then the next item will be the array of expected items. So keyword, say category, what else can we have here? Author. I think that's going to be enough. Now let's import all of these. So we import the request and we import this search as well. So all these use statements have been added here at the top. Okay, so we've got this search, the instance of this search. Now what we want to check, we're going to run a few sessions. This assert true, and we're checking search has keyword. Otherwise, we're going to return the output the message search failed to collect non-empty input, because obviously we've set this keyword to book, so it should collect it and it should be within this collection. So let's save it and run a test PHP unit, and let's run just this test. So tests, then we have unit, and then we have search directory, search test, and one test, one assertion, and it all obviously passes. So that's great. Let's go back to the editor. The next assertion, we obviously need to check if now this will assert to false for category and author. So I'm just going to copy this entire line and this entire block here, this assertion, and I'm going to assert false that our collection has category. It should return Boolean false. So search failed, or search collect this time, or collected empty category, which it shouldn't, because if it's empty, and it will be because our get only contains one key, which is this keyword, we didn't set the category, so it should return false here. If we just go back to the terminal, run the same test, and there we go, one test, two assertions, all pass. And then the same thing goes for the last item, which is going to be this author. Search collected empty author. So if we save it, run the test, one test, three assertions, all of which are passing. Now it's all great, but I think I'm going to add another item here, but this time I'm going to set it to just an empty string, and rather than keyword, this time I'm going to have, say, location, and I'm going to add it to the expected items, so it's collected when we're actually collecting all these items from the request, so location. And now let's see if this is going to also return false. So we're going to duplicate this last block, and location is the key we're checking for, and search collected empty location. Let's see if this is going to run okay. So it should return false because there's no value really associated. It's not numerical, it's just an empty string. And there we go, it passes, so it's all working as expected. Okay, next we're going to create another test. Public function. This time we're going to check if collection is empty, basically. So let's name it checks if collection is empty. And it's to test this method which we've created. If we go back, we've got this method up here, is collection empty, to just basically test this specific method. Okay, so mark it as test. And from within this test, we are going to start with search equals new search. And it takes two arguments. First one's request captcha. And then we have an array of items, which in this case, we just put keyword. We obviously didn't set anything beforehand, so this search should be completely empty. There shouldn't be any items there. So this assert true, and it's going to be search is collection empty. Otherwise, the message will be empty collection is not empty. Okay, let's give it a try and see what we get in here. And we have two tests, 5 assertions, meaning this all works fine, it passes. So now let's do similar thing, but before we run all this, we're going to set this keyword this time to some value, give it some value, say book again, for instance, and then let's copy this entire block. So now we are instantiating search again, and this time we should have obviously something within our collection because this is the required item, the expected item, and it has a value. So now running through this collect method, it should get this item and put it to the collection. So now assert false we are expecting, because this is collection empty, should now return false. And the message should be non-empty, empty collection is empty. I think that makes sense. Okay, let's just go back to the terminal, run a test again. You have two tests, 6 assertions, all of which are passing. So this method works fine as well. Next, I would like to test this is empty method. If we go back, this is empty, to make sure that it always returns the correct Boolean true or false. So public function checks for an empty value. Test, and let me just create a few new lines because it's quite low here. So we are going to start with a search equals new search, and 2 arguments. First one is again request captcha, and then array, let's say keyword, and that's going to be enough for now because we won't really be filtering anything in this test. And the first assertion, so this assert true, search is empty, but as you can see I can't access it because I made it private. It should be public so that we can access it outside of this class. So is empty an empty string, and if it's not, then the message will say empty string evaluates to not empty. evaluates. There we go. So let's run this test. Back to the terminal, PHP unit and our search test file. And there we go. 3 tests, 7 assertions, all passing. So it's all good. Okay, let's duplicate this block. And then we check if null evaluates to empty. And then the message will say null evaluates to not empty. Let's run a test. 3 tests, 8 assertions, all passing. So that's good. Next we are going to evaluate assert true, say false, which should also evaluate to empty. False evaluates to not empty. Let's go back to the terminal. There we go, 9 assertions, all passing. Then we're going to have an empty array. Let's pass an empty array. So just 2 square brackets, empty array. Array evaluates to not empty. If it fails, but it doesn't, it passes, so it's still okay. Then the last thing we want to check, actually we're not going to be duplicating this now, because now we want to check for false. So this assert false, and we want to use search, which is empty, but this time we pass through 0. This should return false because 0 is not empty. It might be passed through with our search request as one of the values that we actually want to receive. So 0 evaluates to empty if it was about to fail. Let's test it, and it works fine. So if we pass 0 with the search, then this will not evaluate to empty and it will be added to our collection, which is great. And let's lastly try with the with just some string, for instance, as evaluate to false as well. And let's put the string as just string, for instance. So string evaluates to empty if it was to fail. And let's run it. And there we go, 3 tests, 12 assertions, all of which are passing. So now our isEmpty method worked just as expected. So let's check what other methods we have here. We've tested isEmpty, we've tested isCollectionEmpty. Now we have has and value is. Let's try with this value is, because this value is will automatically test this has as well. Obviously, if it doesn't have a value, then it will return false. In other words, obviously this will still return the correct value. Okay, so let's try this value is. Public function value is method returns correct boolean response, returns correct boolean. I think that's going to be just what we need. Okay, doesn't take any arguments, obviously, because it's a test. So test. And within this method, we are going to set get keyword to book again. And we instantiate our search, new search, starting again with the request, capture, and then items that we expect with our search request, which will be keyword and category. So now that we have an instance of our search object, this assert true, search value is keyword equals book. That should return true because that's what we associated this keyword index with. And if it fails, then the value is not equal book. And let's test it. So same test, 4 tests, 13 assertions, so everything works. And now the other one is going to be this assert false, search value is category, say romance. Obviously we didn't associate anything with the category, so it should fail. That's why we're checking for false. Otherwise we're going to return the message, the value equals romance, which obviously would be wrong because we didn't set it to it. So let's test it again. And there we go for 14 assertions, all of which are passing. So this value is works just fine. And let's test this has method as well independently. I'm going to copy this entire test, sorry, duplicate it, and I'm going to use has method returns correct boolean. So we said book keyword to book. We have two expected items, assert true, and this sum rather than value is we're going to use has keyword because it should have keyword, because keyword has some value associated with it. So has return false with keyword, and then for this other one we should have has, it should return false because category doesn't have any value, and obviously it should return false. So this one is going to be has returned true with category. And if we test it, and there we go, 5 tests, 16 assertions, all of which are passing. Let's clear the screen, Command K on the keyboard. Okay, next test is going to be testing for, let's quickly check our search class. We have get and set methods left. So next one is going to test the get one. So public function can get correct value. And again, it's a test. We're going to start with, let's set get keyword, which will be book. Then I'm going to duplicate this line twice. Next index is going to be category with value 2. And the last one will be author. And let's have it as Ernest Hemingway. Okay, and we start with the search again. Search equals new search. Request captcha, and then we pass keyword, category, and author. So these are the 3 items that we expect with our request. Whenever we submit the search form, these 3 items should be submitted. And obviously we have them set here using this get super global. Okay, so now we check. This assert equals book is what we're expecting when we call search get keyword. That's what this get method should return when we pass index keyword, because that's what we associate the keyword with. And if it fails, then we say search does not get correct keyword. Let's test it. And it all passes, which is great. Next, let's duplicate this block. And next one will be integer 2, and we're looking for the category because we actually associated category with 2. Search does not get correct category if it fails. Okay, let's test it. 18 assertions, all pass. Great. And the last item that we have, let's have it. It's the author. So let's put it, and I'm just going to copy this name because I will most probably misspell it if I start typing again. Okay, so search does not get correct author if it fails. Okay, so let's run it again. 19 assertions, all of which are passing. Great. So our get method works as expected as well. The last one is the set method. So public function can set correct value. And again, it's a test. And we're going to start with the search equals new search, request captcha, and empty with just keyword. Sorry, expected with just keyword. Okay, we start with this assert null when we are searching, and we run get methods with keyword, and search does not get null for keyword. Let's run it. And it passes because obviously search, we didn't actually set anything beforehand. So keyword should return null, because if we go to the get method, you'll see that if it does not exist, it doesn't have any value. That's why it wasn't added to our collection. That's why has method returns false. And if it returns false, then we will return null from within the get. That's why asserting null keyword for keyword. Okay, next one, we're going to do exactly the same thing. Let's just duplicate this block, assert null for category as well. We didn't even add it to our expected array. So search does not get null for category. That should also pass, and it does. The next one will be, if we duplicate this line, it's going to be author. It should also be null. Let's run it. 22 tests, all great, all passing. So we know these 3 items now are definitely not in the collection. So what we're doing next? Next, we need to set these items, because that's what we're testing here. We're not testing get, we already tested get. We want to test for a set method. So search, set, keyword, and we're going to set it to book. And I'm going to duplicate it twice. Then we have category. We're going to set again to 2, and author to Ernest Hemingway. There we go. So now these 3 items should be set. So let's start with this. Assert equals, and we're looking for keywords. So it should return book. So search get keyword, and if it didn't return book, then search does not set correct keyword. This would indicate that obviously the set didn't set our keyword index as book, as we would expect. So let's go back to the terminal, run a test, 23 assertions, all of which are passing. Great. Let's duplicate this block. This time we're checking for value 2 when we are trying to get category, because that's what we set it as here. So search does not set correct category. Okay, let's just clear this. 24 assertions now, all passing. And the last item will be the author. And this one was set to this Ernest Hemingway. Let's pass it through as the first item here, and search does not set correct author if it was to fail, but it doesn't. It all passes, which means our search class is now fully completed.